Well, driving intelligence community, here my voltage is down at 10.8. I've got a voltage gauge which is better than the dummy gauge here, which doesn't even show that I've got a problem yet. Before I move on with assessment and repair of my charging system issue, I just want to point out something that's key. You notice that the gauge on the dash was not showing any indication of a problem, but if I looked at the auxiliary gauge that I had in my console, it definitely showed that charging performance was dropping. So the gauge on the dash of a 10th gen on many vehicles is a dummy gauge. All it does is tell you if it's working or if it's not. And by the time it tells you it's not working, it's too late. You're probably going to get stranded. So I recommend that you put a voltage gauge in your vehicle that shows the actual voltage, similar to mine. I'm going to link below the video where I installed that system in my truck, and I'll also link the part. Now the part that I use exactly is not available anymore, but there is a similar part that I'm showing a link to. You can check that out and see if that works for you. I hooked my multimeter up to it first after I turned the engine off. The gauge in the vehicle was saying just over 6 volts, and I was having lots of function issues. Windshield wipers were turning on by themselves, windows wouldn't open, etc. I knew that the battery was pretty good since it jumped back up to 10 volts shortly after shutting it off, which gave me an indication that that alternator is what's bad. I put the charger on there, and now I'm getting 13.6, 7 volts, etc. So it's definitely taking a charge, no problem on that. And because I bought this alternator at AutoZone with the lifetime warranty, it's going to take it in, get them to test it. I'm pretty sure that's the problem. I'll get another alternator at zero cost. It's just the cost of frustration, and get back on the road. Here's a little bonus material, and I hope you'll bear with me because I think this is highly interesting, and it kind of aligns with the problem I was having with the alternator. When the voltage was dropping on my alternator, then I started having issues like windshield wipers operating on their own, windows wouldn't open, etc. And I've heard a lot of people talk about issues like that happening when the gem module is going bad. And these gem modules have had a tendency to go bad on these F-150s because the windshields leak. And I've got a video on windshield leakage I'll link below. Anyway, here's the gem module on the fuse block. And you can see that when there's water dripping on this, there can be corrosion on these connection points. This one's pretty clean. I took it out of a junked vehicle. All the connection points look good here. I started disassembling this so you can see in here you could have some corrosion on all these fuse points. This is the fuse block assembly. Well, it made me think that if you got corrosion, what you're basically doing is creating a resistance. It's like putting a resistance in the circuit, which is going to prevent the gem module from functioning properly. So you may not have a bad gem module, you might just have corrosion. So you might want to go out there, you might try to go out and buy an expensive gem module, put it in, and it doesn't fix your problem because you still have a lot of corrosion on all these connection points. You can see connection points here, here, and then there's a couple other big connection points on the other side here. And you need to make sure that those are all clear of corrosion. So again, little bonus material, if you have your windshield wipers going on by themselves or maybe other electrical issues like little gremlins, it might just be corrosion. It might not be a bad gem module or other electrical components. So check that out first. In my case, I knew it was the alternator because the voltage on my voltage gauge was dropping. So let's get back with the repair. I let my battery charger run all night, and I've just disconnected it, and I want to see if the battery holds a charge. It's still at 13 volts. Of course, it's going to reduce voltage over time, but I hope it stabilizes about 12.5 volts. And if it does, I'm sure it's not the battery. It's got to be the charging system, the alternator, or the integrated voltage regulator. But either way, as I mentioned, this is lifetime warranted. I'm going to go ahead and take it off and get it replaced. So I've waited about 10 minutes, and I've definitely got a good battery. It's holding 12.84 volts. That's excellent. And if you've seen some of my other videos, I actually maintain my batteries by adding distilled water. So I'll list that below and tag it up top at the end of the video. But this tells me that I definitely don't have a battery issue. It's got to be the alternator. Now I got to pull some things off the top of the engine to get to that alternator. Throttle body cover, air intake tube. I'm going to take the belt off first, but even before that I'm going to disconnect the ground so I don't have any electrical continuity when I take those power wires off the alternator. To get the belt off, just use a big breaker bar on that tensioner, and you're going to pull it toward the driver's side of the vehicle. All the bolts holding this on, including this heavy wire connector here, are all 10 millimeter. Another reminder of the oil catch can benefits. There's just a little bit of oil in there, which surprised me because normally I don't have any. I've got some oil coming out of one of these tubes I'm gonna have to check on, but that's still pretty clean. You can see that throttle body is not contaminated. Okay, I just inspected the oil. This is coming from the driver's side PCV, or the vent on the valve cover. This side comes from the passenger side, where I've got the oil catch can, so I need to figure out what to do with that one. Well, I ended up with a big surgery on this one. Because the water pump pulley comes from an underdrive kit, the diameter was so big I couldn't get the lower bolt off the alternator. Had to take that pulley off, but in order to get the pulley off, I had to get my air ratchet system. And because I didn't have the clearance between the fan cowling and that, I had to take the fan cowling out. So I was able to get it out, and I've got the replacement alternator, which I'm going to put in. Incidentally, because I'm using the 2004 Cobra water pump, I don't need, and I'm using the electric fan, I'm not using a clutch-driven fan, so that made this operation quite a bit easier to get all this stuff out of the way. So keep that in mind if you ever want to do something like this. It's an offset of having a bigger pulley on the underdrive system, but it sure is a lot easier not having that big clutch-driven fan in the way. Little tip on the water pump pulley. Put these in with just a drop of Loctite, hardly any on it. Do them a little bit snug, then get the belt on her, and then you can tighten them up more effectively. Trying to do this without the belt on makes it a little bit more difficult, especially if you don't have any air tools. As I put this back together, I see that one of my transmission fluid lines, the one going to the top of the radiator on the end tank, is covered with some transmission fluid and grime. I'm going to clean that off, pull that connection fitting out, clean up the threads, put some Teflon tape on there, and hope that that holds. And with that last photo, everything's back together. It's just a matter of testing it. All right, here we go. Starts right up, and voltage is back where it belongs, 14.4. Gotta love a successful repair operation. Give me that thumbs up. Please subscribe. See you next time on Driving Intelligence.